withdraw from Afghanistan by his deadline, August 31st. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is one of several leaders from G7 nations who met with him yesterday and wanted to extend that deadline. Esme Nicholson has more.
Speaking to journalists in Berlin after the G7 virtual summit, Chancellor Merkel chose her words carefully, saying the talks have not resulted in, quote, new dates for the end of the evacuation mission. When asked whether there was criticism of President Biden's decision to stick to the August 31st withdrawal date, Merkel insisted the chaos in Afghanistan is something for which all NATO countries must accept responsibility. Merkel stressed that without the US, its NATO allies cannot continue the evacuation mission. The German Chancellor also said that Germany is ready to work with Pakistan and Iran to help support refugees from Afghanistan. For NPR News, I'm Esme Nicholson in Berlin.
Vice President Harris is traveling in Vietnam. She has been repeatedly questioned about the chaotic U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Harris says the focus now should only be on evacuating people from the country. Reporter Michael Sullivan is in Thailand and is following Harris's trip in Southeast Asia.
She stayed very much on message, assuring Washington's partners in Southeast Asia that the region is critically important, in her words, to U.S. security and prosperity. And on the latter point, she emphasized the growing economic interdependence between the two. And then, of course, she also talked about security and the other elephant in the room, China.
Michael Sullivan reporting. The U.S. Supreme Court has blocked an effort by the Biden administration to get rid of a Trump-era policy affecting people who are seeking asylum in the U.S. The justices upheld a lower federal court decision keeping the Trump-era program known as Remain in Mexico. Immigration rights activists say thousands of asylum applicants are waiting there in dire conditions for their cases to be heard in the U.S. The House has narrowly approved a budget resolution that sets up the blueprint for a $3.5 trillion spending deal. NPR's Windsor Johnston has more.
The budget blueprint passed along party lines, advancing Democrats' efforts to pass hundreds of billions in new spending on childcare, education, and measures to combat climate change. It will allow Democrats to pass the bill using a budget reconciliation process without support from Republicans. Tuesday's critical vote came after days of infighting that pit left-leaning progressives against more moderate Democrats with the budget resolution and a separate bipartisan infrastructure bill hanging in the balance. In order to break the stalemate, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has committed to passing the infrastructure measure by September 27th. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR News.
It's now 4 minutes after 9. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Michelle Corum. 22 Afghan refugees have arrived here in Jacksonville in the past 3 weeks as the Taliban take over their country. 5 families of adults and children arrived here recently, some with special immigrant visas. Laura Cook with Lutheran Social Services says they're setting up apartments and accepting donations of household items like couches, tables, and blankets.
We've had a really big outpouring to our organization over this past week from the community. It's been really positive. So I think right now we're set up for some good success to be able to serve these families well and to welcome them into our community.
The goal is to help refugees become self-sufficient within 90 days by providing jobs and culture orientation.
We'll enroll their kids in school, enroll them in ESOL classes, English as second language classes that they'll be taking. We'll also make sure that they have all documents they need to have, Social Security, green cards.
Many of the resettled refugees served as interpreters for the U.S. military in Afghanistan. Lutheran Social Services expects to help more than 275 refugees in the coming fiscal year. It's cloudy now in Jacksonville at 77 degrees. We do have a 50% chance of rain starting around midday. Mostly cloudy, upper 80s this afternoon, mid-70s tonight, and more rain expected tomorrow, upper 80s in the afternoon. This is WJCT News.
Support for NPR comes from iDrive, providing cloud backup, full system backup, and on-site iDrive appliance to protect PCs, Macs, and servers from data loss due to crashes and ransomware at iDrive.com/NPR. And Americans for the Arts.
As more school districts around the state tighten up their rules about masks, a new poll finds 60% of Florida residents support them. Good morning. We're live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead, why more districts around the state are defying the governor on masks and why doctors played a big role in this. We'll speak to one in a moment. Call us up now, 549-2937. Then later, how marketers say advertising and marketing principles could convince vaccine skeptic Americans to get the shot. We'll also have some good news for your week and speak with the Times Union's Mark Woods about the 105th birthday of our national parks. But first this hour, starting today, all employees in the St. Johns County School District will be required to wear a mask at work. Visitors to the school will also be asked to put on a facial covering. St. Johns County School Superintendent Tim Forson says with the number of positive cases increasing both in the staff and student populations, it's the right thing to do. However, St. John's still is not mandating masks for students. Unlike 10 school districts now around the state who have defied Governor DeSantis and tightened up mask rules for kids. A new Quinnipiac poll finds 60% of Florida residents support requiring students, teachers, and staff to wear masks in schools. 98% of the state's Democrats support the idea. 63% of independents do too, but just 24% of Republicans. We're talking about this right now with Dr. Jeff Goldhagen, a leading pediatrician in our area, affiliated with UF College of Medicine. He's also president of the International Society for Social Pediatrics and Child Health. He's been instrumental in convincing educators on this, and he's on the line. Dr. Goldhagen, good morning.
Good morning, Melissa, and thank you for the opportunity.
Always good to have you. 549-2937. Join us as we talk first off about St. Johns County, which will be having a virtual meeting about this today and is certain to be an intense one on both sides from parents who have strong feelings about this. 549-2937, emails to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, tweets to @MelissaInjax. So what are your thoughts, Dr. Goldhagen, about St. Johns County? Of course, earlier this week, Duval County said they're going to mandate masks. Yesterday, Orange County, Indian River County joined other districts saying they'll be mandating masks. 70% of the state's kids now are going to be under a mask mandate, defying the governor, but not St. Johns County.
Well, the issue is really very clear that we here in our region are the epicenter for COVID in the country. We have people dying. We have children now who are being hospitalized at rates that we did not see during the peak of the pandemic. We're in the midst of a catastrophe today as it relates to COVID, dealing with a new variant that is highly transmissible. And by virtually all the new data coming in indicates it's more virulent. This is the reality we're facing, and we can stop it. We can eliminate it. We did it during the first part of the pandemic when we all came together as a community. We can stop this now, and one of the reasons why we're experiencing this today and we did not experience it a year ago is because people are not masked. Masking eliminates much of the transmission of the disease. Children are a critical source of that transmission. Our schools and school staff represent large percentages of our community. And until we come together as a community to say something as simple and basic as masking is what we need in order to stop this pandemic, then, or at least limit the impact of the pandemic, then we'll continue to see hospitalizations mounting, increasing deaths in adults, increasing impact on children. And what's sad and frustrating is that we can address this with very simple public health measures.
It has been extraordinary to see how divisive this is as local school boards work on this issue. For example, in Duval County this week, they met for 8 hours before finally deciding to go ahead and require students to mask up. That doesn't take effect in Duval County, Dr. Goldhagen, until after Labor Day. You and other pediatricians have really led the charge on this because you're advocating for children. What else do you think school districts should be doing in terms of contact tracing, quarantining students, other measures to protect this population?
Well, from the beginning, I was pretty vociferous about the fact that schools don't exist in isolation, that in fact they're part of the system of care. They're part of our public health systems. Unfortunately, this governor, previous governor, essentially moved to dismantle public health in our state. So the resources we have now for public health and to respond to something like a pandemic are only a shadow of what they were before. So unfortunately, the critical elements of contact tracing, of testing, of reporting, all of the critical elements of a public health system are not in place at this point in time, which makes it even more important that institutions like our school system have to pick up some of that slack and implement comprehensive public health measures to, in our situation now, to address the pandemic. The other things that are happening, as we see now with the licensing of the vaccine, at least the Pfizer vaccine, is increasingly public and private sector businesses and organizations are requiring vaccination. And that will be something that will be critically important to happen as we move forward.
Right. With Pfizer's vaccine now receiving full FDA approval, let's talk about this being used potentially off-label for kids under 12 and when we might see an approval of a vaccine for younger children.
Well, unfortunately, this pandemic has really been, the response to this pandemic has reflected bureaucracy and politics. So your introduction that 98% of the Democrats support masking and only 30% or so of Republicans is really a reflection of how this has really become a political issue. The issue for licensing the vaccine or getting emergency orders for young children is a bureaucratic issue that the FDA and CDC could have moved forward faster with increased number of kids in trials in order to be able to address the needs of children, in this case, younger children. They didn't. They are now, and I suspect that certainly by the new year that we will be authorizing the use of the vaccine for children 5 to 12, and soon thereafter, kids between 6 months and 5 years of age. However, during this lapse time, these children are exposed to COVID. Many of them are getting sick from COVID. We know that increasingly that kids actually are experiencing long COVID. We don't know how many children will be affected long term. And so in some sense, Melissa, and this is very difficult to say, our response to children, whether it's masking or access to vaccines, represents a significant disregard and disrespect, a profound disregard and disrespect for children in our communities and in our country. Rather than focusing on their needs or including their needs as a priority, they have to a certain extent been a second thought, in part because of this misperception and misrepresentation that they don't get sick and they're not going to be impacted by this disease. And in fact, that is fundamentally wrong. They do get sick.
Yeah. And they're impacted in other ways. A Duval school has gone virtual already because its positivity rate just hit 20%. Of course, the last thing any parent wants, Dr. Goldhagen, is to have their child brought home again to virtual school after what we all went through last year. That is not what really almost any parent wants right now. And if you don't mask up the whole student population, that's what you're going to get.
Exactly right, and that's the paradox. Parents want what's best for their children, and they want their children in school, and all of us want our children in school. Then the simple fact is all children and all staff must be masked. Now, I sat through that school board meeting for all 8 hours on Monday. And
the Duval meeting, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Duval meeting, and the parents that spoke felt really very strongly, down to their core, that in fact that masking was an impact on their civil liberties, and that it was harming their children. Now, we can tell them very specifically through large amounts of data that masking has no significant impact on their children. The other issues related to impeding and infringing on their rights is one that we really need to address as a community and as a country and as a society. And as I've said before, this variant and what we're experiencing now is a dress rehearsal for what is coming next. And there will be something next. There will be another virus. We had HIV, we had Zika, we had Ebola, we had H1N1, we had MERS, we had SARS. So any perception that this is a unique event is clearly not consistent with history. And we will see either another COVID virus emerging or another variant emerging, which could in fact be not susceptible to the vaccine and hopefully not preferentially impact children.
We're speaking with Dr. Jeff Goldhagen of UF College of Medicine, and he's also president of the International Society for Social Pediatrics and Child Health. 549-2937. Isla Ray in Riverside starts us off. Isla Ray, good morning.
Good morning. I'm concerned about the fact that we keep talking about this as being a political issue, and I think it's more a very deep philosophical issue. There was a study done by Lehigh University College of Business regarding the difference in the understanding of the COVID-19 between conservatives and liberals. And what they discovered was that conservatives are much more sensitive to agency, the idea that a person is afraid of people and not afraid of things. So when we talk to a really rabid person regarding masks or the vaccination, we need to talk in terms of agency. Talk about the virus as being a person-like thing. And if we continue to get that message out, I think that we would be able to turn some hearts a little bit more easily than discussing politics.
That's great insight, Isla Ray. I so thank you for that. And in fact, later in the hour, we actually are going to be speaking to a marketing expert who's going to share with us how the way we market the campaign to vaccinate may reach people who are still opposed, the way we talk about this. And that's such a great point. Dr. Goldhagen, some 80 million Americans are still not vaxxed up for a number of reasons. And when she mentions agency, I think people who are so opposed to masking, perhaps they see it in the same light. They feel that their agency is being taken away, that they're being told what to do, or that their children are being told what to do. But, to send your child to school, you've got to get a bunch of vaccines. You have to adhere to a basic dress code. Kids have to follow all kinds of rules to go to school.
And we, in fact, follow rules every day, whether it's when we're driving or whether we're dealing with, rules in the hospital or wherever you happen to be. There are rules. That's what society is built on, is a sense of rule keeping. And so, yes, the comment by the the speaker was really an interesting and important one that I think we really need to begin to think about. However, the issues do degenerate into political issues, as we've seen happen here in Florida. The governor did not say we're going to give agency to school districts and we're going to give agency to communities. In fact, he took away agency for political reasons, and I think that's something that we need to accept. I need to make a statement that although I'm affiliated with the University of Florida, my comments do not reflect the positions of the University of Florida.
549-2937. Susan in Mandarin. Hello, Susan.
Yes, I was watching the school board meeting on because they have it live. I wasn't there, but I noticed that there was a lot of unmasked people. There was also a photo in the newspaper with the unmasked people. And I understand that there is a rule already before the meeting that all adults and guests visiting school board facilities, including schools and other school board facilities, were required to wear masks. So I wonder why these people weren't wearing masks. And do you think the city should have a mask mandate? And some of the people that were speaking were talking about aerosols and water droplets. And I was wondering if you could speak to that. Like, how does the mask work against those two things?
Let's talk.
You.
I really don't think we're going to see another mask mandate coming back because the governor has forbid city leaders from doing those kinds of things again, to answer your question. But I want to touch on the fact that in St. Johns County, there's going to be another meeting about this today. Heather Prediletto is the co-founder of Doctors and Community Members for Masks in St. Johns County schools. She will be there along with a lot of other parents, and we spoke with her earlier today. Take a listen.
The staff mandate is a baby step in the right direction, but the fact is our teachers are able to receive the life-saving vaccine, and our children under 12 are not. The district keeps treating this virus like it's the same strain as last year, where kids weren't really affected as much and they didn't spread it as easily. But with this Delta variant, kids can easily spread it to each other, and they're having bad outcomes. They're ending up in the hospital. They're ending up in the ICU. And if you look at our numbers for just St. Johns County students, not the teachers, just the students, it's 104% increase in positive cases since the first day of school. And that's just a week and a half ago. So this is just going to keep increasing. And also, that's just the cases that we know about. The only way to stop this is to mandate masks for all the students. An important next step is for the school board to do something similar to what Duval County School did. I'm really disappointed in the lack of transparency. The board is claiming that they're consulting with Flagler Hospital, which really makes no sense since our kids will be treated at Wolfson, and all of Northern St. John's residents seek care in Duval hospitals. And I guarantee you that there's no medical professional at Flagler Hospital advising the board to keep masks optional.
Okay, so that's the view from St. John's. Now, here's a related issue. Teachers leaving the profession and a lot of teacher vacancies. Teachers don't want to endanger themselves. One of them is Kendra Lane, a retired teacher from the Duval schools. She left the classroom because of these concerns, and we spoke with her yesterday.
I think it's really important that all students and teachers and personnel are vaccinated. I realize that some people are ineligible based on their age, medical status, etc. Everyone wants to be in person. Small percentage, of course, choose virtual education. I mean, it's a very tough job. It's always been a very tough job. Public schools tend to be built on the backs of teachers. There's a lot of mandatory volunteerism. It's not acceptable for teachers to have to be forced to have constant contact with children who are vaccinated, and the converse is true. It's not acceptable for students to have to be exposed to teachers who are unvaccinated. You know, people talk about liberty and freedom and democracy and their rights, but the thing is, they're talking about their right not to get a vaccination. They also don't have a right to spread infectious disease or infectious virus.
Okay, so Dr. Goldhagen, what these folks are saying is your liberty extends only as far as the particles that come out of your mouth and nose. When they come into contact with me and my kids, we have a problem.
Correct. And we only have to look back to a year to see how successful we were in addressing the transmission of this disease, which now is a different disease, more transmissible and more virulent. We know masks work. I have a list of 70 plus peer-reviewed studies that indicate that masks work. And I would disagree a bit with the physician from St. Johns County. Masking is not a baby step. It's a huge step, in particular because, as she mentioned, that many children are asymptomatic and we don't know who is spreading the disease and who is not. So masking is a fundamental requirement in order for us to impact the spread of this disease. Meanwhile, people are dying. Meanwhile, children are being impacted, and there's really no end in sight until we are all masked.
Do you plan, along with other pediatricians, to lobby the St. John's district or other districts the way you have Duval County to change policy?
Well, we have reached out to our network of pediatricians through the Northeast Florida Pediatric Society. And so we're working actually on mobilizing individuals to be able to participate. The reality is, ironically, that pediatricians' offices now are being inundated with COVID cases. And so in the past where they might have seen one or two a week, now they're seeing upwards of 15 to 20 a day that are coming into their offices with COVID. And it's significantly impacting the medical system for sure. And there's huge burnout and in the hospitals. I mean, we are in an emergency situation dealing with a catastrophic event that, in fact, which makes it so difficult, we can prevent.
Dr. Jeff Goldhagen, always good to get your insights. Thanks so much.
No, thank you, Melissa, and thank you for all of the folks out there that are working hard to stop this pandemic.
And we'll follow along the action in St. Johns County today. Their meeting is about other topics, but they're certain to hear from parents and the public about this today. Much more still ahead, meanwhile. Later in the hour, Dining Out for Life this week, how you can support HIV and AIDS treatment. But up next.
The important thing for all of us to realize is that there are many different reasons why people are not yet vaccinated. Some of them have to do with hesitancy, and some of them have to do with other things like vaccine apathy.
Why advertising and marketing experts may have the key to getting more Americans to get the jab. That's next. Well, 80 million Americans are still resisting getting the COVID vaccine, and they have a number of reasons for that. Some are wary of vaccines in general, others have been led astray by misinformation. Well, the Pfizer vaccine now has full FDA approval. Will this spur on more of the vaccine hesitant to go ahead and get the shot? For more on this, we spoke with Stacy Wood, PhD. She's a Jacksonville native and now a professor of marketing at North Carolina State University. She also recently co-published a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine looking at how marketing could be the trick into getting more people to vaccinate.
So there's science behind people being hesitant to get vaccinated, right? What's behind their hesitancy?
Well, I think the important thing for all of us to realize is that there are many different reasons why people are not yet vaccinated. Some of them have to do with hesitancy, and some of them have to do with other things like vaccine apathy. For some people, this is not about being concerned about side effects, but just about being busy and having this not be an urgent top of the to-do list item.
There's behavioral science behind some of the reasons people give, right, or their inaction. You and so many others have been studying this.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one answer, right?
That is true. Kevin Schulman and I wrote a paper, it was in January of this year in the New England Journal of Medicine, discussing 12 different things that could be done from a behavioral science perspective to promote vaccine uptake. And it was really just the insight that the vaccine is a new product. And like any other new product, there are marketing strategies that we can follow. And so while it's not common to think of marketing and medicine going together in any kind of for the public good way, it sounds like, something where somebody who's going to be tricked into drinking more sugary soft drinks than they should. But when you put marketing theory behind vaccine promotion, what we get is an idea of all the different things you can do to promote it, just like any new product, just like an iPhone, just like back in the day when the country was divided about whether we should have electricity or not. It's the same pattern.
Interesting. So that's fascinating that people were that divided on something like that, but I guess they really were. So
yeah, I think we forget how divided people can be even about a really good thing. And some of it is about timing. Some people, when we study diffusion of innovation in my field, we realize that some people love to be first and they like to do things before other people do things. It's just part of their personality, part of their interest in a particular domain, be it computers or cars or music or fashion. And then other people are inherently just less interested in that same domain and need a lot of different reasons to adopt the same new product that someone else would get, right off the bat.
Right. There are those early adopters, people who have the FOMO, the fear of missing out. And then there are other people who that is not a motivation at all. So what are good motivators for people who are still shunning vaccines? Does sharing positive information work better, or sharing the risks work better to convince people?
It depends. It really depends on what the person's hurdle to vaccination is. And now, you're right, we're in the stage where we're with what we would call late adopters, the late majority. And so these are people who have hesitation for a number of different reasons. For some people, it's going to be health risk. They're worried about vaccine side effects. They're worried about the vaccine not having sort of proven itself for a long enough time. For those people, continuing health information, continuing information from their doctors, watching the Delta variant, for them, really their risk calculus might change, right? Like it might have been that they were more concerned about the risks of the side effects, but as Delta becomes more dangerous, maybe suddenly that risk is relatively smaller compared to these new risks of COVID infection.
Yeah.
But for other people, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, for some people, the risks are not really why they're not doing it. They just see it, for some people, it might be an identity thing. They just see it as kind of not for them, not for people like them. And that might be for a lot of different identities. Like they might be college students who feel like they're healthy and invincible and they don't normally get sick, so why would they worry about getting sick now. For other people, it might be because they have religious concerns and that they see themselves as being in a group of people who don't want that kind of medical interference to in some way say something about their faith. So for those people, it's not about getting more risk information or more health safety information. It's about seeing the vaccination as congruent with their identity. So for some college students, they see it as doing something that is necessary to get back to football games and tailgating and being in big crowds on campus. For other people who might have religious identity issues, it's about hearing a pastor or a leader in their church say, you know what, this is a gift from God. We're going to do this. This is congruent with our identity. So the lever or the piece of information people need now is really different. And that's why we have to approach people carefully, even loved ones, even your own friends and family. Because if if they have an identity barrier to getting the vaccine and you go at them with all this, medical research information and statistics, it's not working. And in fact, it can just make them feel attacked.
Yeah, and it can often cause them to double down, dig in their heels more. Do some people gain from vaccine refusal? Is that even giving some people a feeling of increased identity and comfort in their tribe?
I think so. I think that whenever we are trying to reinforce our identity with products, in essence, because I am a marketing professor, you can see that people buy things that are congruent or that fit with their identity. So the type of car they drive, the kind of clothes they wear, the kind of house, the kind of vacations, like all these different things that we might choose say something about what we think, the kind of person we think we are. And so choosing or not choosing, often very vocally, the vaccine says something about who we think we are. I think the important thing is not to get into an identity battle about this, but rather to see it as fitting with all manner of different identities. Like, people get the vaccine for different reasons. People have hesitation about the vaccine for different reasons. And that kind of difference is, recognizing that kind of difference is what's going to get us to that herd immunity number.
And then lastly, Professor, this has become so politicized. Is there any hope at this point of getting people to remove their personal politics from this whole decision?
I think so. I think that while politics have been powerful in COVID-19 and in the reaction to the vaccine, over time, we have to remember that particular part of the narrative is going to fade. And years from now, when maybe the COVID vaccination is as normal and everyday a thing as getting a flu vaccine, I think that political angle is going to fade. Right now, it's good press. Right now, it's interesting. It creates word of mouth. People like it on social media or will respond to it with heat. It draws attention. But in the future, it's not going to draw attention, and therefore I think it's going to sort of die out as part of a particular political narrative. But, I mean, that's years away, and we need to try and increase vaccination rates now. So I think right now is it's got to be a personal push. It's got to be family members asking family members to become vaccinated. It's got to be friends telling friends, I'm worried for you. I know you don't think this is important. I know you don't think that this is really something you need. But if you did it, I would sleep better. I would be so much less anxious. Do it for me. And really, one of the things I like is that there have been many attempts at FOMO, at creating incentives that people will get excited about, everything from $1 million lotteries to free Krispy Kreme donuts.
Yeah.
But really, the incentives that might work the best for whoever's brother-in-law or aunt, some holdout, might be a personal incentive. You get this vaccine, to allay my fears, and I'll help you clean out, your garage on Saturday. I'll take your kids for the night so you can go out for a fancy dinner. I'll 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 join a gym or something you wanted me to do for my health. So I think this is probably a pretty good time for the friends and family incentives that the CDC couldn't even hope to copy.
Such a smart insight. Thank you so much. Stacy Wood, PhD, professor of marketing at North Carolina State, and a Jacksonville native, and her research co-authored in the New England Journal of Medicine, Beyond Politics, Promoting COVID-19 Vaccination in the United States. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, the National Park Service is celebrating its 105th birthday today. Parks across the country are hosting programs, virtual experiences, and they're waiving entrance fees for everyone to come out and enjoy what is known as America's Best Idea, our national parks. Let's talk about it now with the Times-Union's Mark Woods. He's the author of a great book, Lassoing the Sun, A Year in America's National Parks. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Melissa.
I can't believe it's been 5 years since your book came out. Time really flies.
I know. In some ways, feels like.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you have an interesting column about this today, talking about the parks, your thoughts about the parks, and how the parks have become political like everything else in American life.
Right. Yeah. The premise of the project that led to the book was kind of it was built around the centennial. Was going to be in 2016. Parks were created on this date in 1916. And I was trying to look into the future, the next 100 years. And I said many others, from Ansel Adams to Ken Burns, had beautifully documented the first 100 years. But what would happen in the next 100? And so that was kind of the original goal of the project. And there were a lot of things that have happened already in the first 5 years of the second century that I just did not see coming. So it's been a tumultuous start of the second century for the Park Service.
Yeah, I mean, we think of the parks, including our own Timucuan National Park here in Jacksonville, as these oases, that are havens from the political world and public life. But as you write in the Times-Union, the parks really have become politicized. It happened during the Trump years. Let's talk about some of these things that happened. Bears Ears, the first national monument, saw the shrinking of its acreage. We saw the largest rollback of federal land protection in U.S. history. The Interior Secretary during the Trump administration was a former oil industry lobbyist. There was no one running the National Park Service permanently for a long time, as you write. And so this woke people up, didn't it, to the importance of protecting our parks?
Right. When I was finishing writing the book in January of 2016, so it could come out that summer, right before the centennial. And 2016, it's a election year, but I'm not really thinking that's going to have much effect or future, whoever's running Washington down the line. And that's not to say, I think throughout time, politics have played a role in parks. The very creation of them, presidents create national monuments. Congress creates the iconic ones. We think of the 63 national parks. So there's always a political element, but it's historically been very bipartisan, our love and support of the parks. And I kind of didn't think that would have much of an effect, but no matter who got elected in 2016. But it was it was definitely a tumultuous 4 years with the Trump administration, trying to look into a crystal ball. I did not see that day one of the first battles he would take on would be this feud with the National Park Service over the size of his inauguration crowd. And, it kind of went from there, that there was a lot of gutting and rollback, and it was a lot happened to our national parks. Yeah, you mentioned Bears Ears was one of the first national monuments created by with the input of Native American tribes, and that was just shrunk to a fraction of its size, which was, it's not that we had never ever shrunk a national monument before. That had happened, but never so dramatically. So there was some of these unprecedented things happened in the first 5 years.
Now, though, as you note, the Great American Outdoors Act legislation passed last year will dedicate funding to shore up our national parks, which have a big backlog. The first Native American director of the National Park Service could soon be confirmed. Americans are heading to the parks in large numbers, so people are rediscovering this incredible resource, which you write about in your book. And I would encourage everyone to buy Mark's book, Lassoing the Sun. He took a full year to visit as many national parks as he could. Starting, I believe you started at Acadia National Park in Maine and then worked your way through the country.
Yeah, started in Acadia in Maine and finished in Haleakala in Hawaii. Yeah, tough gig. Yeah.
I know. We were all so jealous of you. Oh my gosh.
Right.
But Mark, it's amazing because we have so much treasure in this country, and it sort of takes it being threatened for people to realize the incredible resources and lands that we have.
Right. I said in some ways this was the worst of times and also the best of times, because something else that happened in the last 5 years was just the rallying around the parks in a way I don't know I'd seen before. A lot of it was individuals and some of the political battles, but it was also some you saw the Patagonias and REIs that stepped in and said, we need to protect our public lands in ways that kind of corporate entities had maybe been shy about jumping into that. And they became much more involved, and people, said, no, we care about these things. And I think in some ways people voted just with their feet we had all kinds of record visitations. And this summer, when it seemed like we were, finally maybe getting over the pandemic, the parks were exploding at the seams with people. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. And yes, it's very interesting we have an Interior Secretary that's the first Native American serve as a cabinet secretary, and now the nomination of Charles Sams, who, if confirmed, would be the first Native American to head the Park Service. So that, I think, I look at that as a very good trend.
A good trend. And I would encourage everyone, as I said, to buy Mark's book, Lassoing the Sun, and visit a national park soon, including one right here in town, the Timucuan Preserve. Mark Woods, always great to talk to you. And
thanks, Melissa.
Thank you. And read Mark's column today, too, in the Florida Times-Union. And in a moment,
I have an aunt who died from HIV/AIDS, and she had a long battle, left a son behind. And it's just something that's near and dear to my heart.
How you can join local celebrities and dine out for life this week. That's next.
The law offices of Phillips & Hunt proudly support WJCT, personal injury, criminal defense, and family law. Phillips & Hunt, committed to justice. 904-444-4444 or floridajustice.com. ServPro Jacksonville South and Arlington Jacksonville East reminds you water damage happens fast. Be prepared for this year's storm season with emergency plans and service numbers on hand. 721-2230. ServPro Jacksonville South and Arlington Jacksonville East, like it never even happened.
When one family fled Afghanistan during the Soviet war, they settled in the U.S.
When I remember those days, I think to myself, we have to be here for our Afghan community that's coming. because they've gone through a lot.
Now, decades later, they are helping a community prepare to welcome a new generation of Afghan refugees. That story this afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Starting at 4 on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Fresh Air, addiction specialist Dr. Anna Lemke. She says we live in a time of unprecedented access to high-reward, high-dopamine stimuli. Drugs, food, news, gambling, shopping, texting, and tweeting, making us vulnerable to overconsumption and addiction. Her new book is Dopamine Nation. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
2020 was incredibly hard, but so far, 2021 has come with a lot more questions.
Why a booster shot? Is that going to help ward against the Delta variant?
How likely is it that someone fully vaccinated with a booster could contract the virus and spread it?
We put your questions to the experts next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. You can do your part to help HIV and AIDS patients in town this week just by getting a meal at a local restaurant, either to dine in or to go. I got a preview of this week's 16th annual Dining Out for Life with Stephen Jones of the Northeast Florida AIDS Network and Don Lopez and Derek Odom of Action News Jax.
And so we have 19 restaurants. All the participating restaurants are listed on our website, infanjax.org.
Lots of great options for lunch or dinner. Don Lopez, let's talk to you really quickly. You and some of your coworkers will be seen out at some of these venues doing your part, right?
Doing our part, masked up and ready to come out and be a part of the community, help the community. I have an aunt who died from HIV/AIDS, and she had a long battle, left a son behind. And it's just something that, you know, it's near and dear to my heart. I was just honored when Derek and the gang invited me to come and be a part.
And Derek Odom, you know, the pandemic has taken up so much oxygen, but we need to keep our eye on this issue. HIV and AIDS remains a big public health problem for Duval County.
Yeah, it's still a big issue, and we definitely don't need to let it drift too far away from the spotlight. As you well know, Florida and Duval County have always been, unfortunately, high in the numbers of infection rates, and especially in the African American community. So we definitely want to keep the spotlight on it, and this is an easy way to do it for people just to go out and have a great meal, and all of the 25% or more of the funds that they spend will go to this great cause.
So, Stephen, this is so easy. This Thursday, all you got to do is pick a restaurant on the list and go eat.
Yes, it is just that simple. A lot of folks will get a group of friends or coworkers or family and just make it an event and have a good time and all go out together. But lunch or dinner, just see on the website tells you the location of the restaurant. You can click on the link to their website if you want to look at the menu or check out that. Also, just because being conscious of the world right now, you can, instead of going out, you can also do delivery or to go, and that from the restaurant, and that will still go to, the percentage will still be donated from that restaurant location. Also on InFan's website, infanjax.org, we have created what we're calling a virtual table. So you'll see the virtual table there on the website. You can click on that if you're not able to go out at all and make a donation to InFan to support Dining Out for Life that way.
Fantastic. So, Derek, Don, where can we see you this Thursday? Where can your fans see you out and about?
Well, you know, Melissa, I have to go support Biscotti's because they've been with us since the very beginning. And it's one of my favorites. I believe it's one of Don Lopez's favorites as well. So I'm definitely going to be at Biscotti's for dinner. And I think I'm going to get some barbecue, maybe Fred Cotton's barbecue for lunch. So I'll be out and about there.
Tasty. How about you, Don Lopez?
I'll be with Derek for dinner. I'm still shopping around for lunch. So many great options. Just I'm a foodie, so
she's gonna pick one though.
I would say my twins will be in on this with me, so maybe I'll let them decide lunch.
There you go. Look at nfanjax.org. Pick a restaurant this Thursday for lunch or dinner.
Go out to eat, and you will be supporting the 16th annual Dining Out for Life, benefiting the Northeast Florida AIDS Network. Stephen Jones with NFAN, Derek Odom, and Don Lopez of Action News Jax. Good to see you guys virtually, and happy dining.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
Some other good news from your week. The Jacksonville Historical Society seeks to highlight the culture, history, and accomplishments of this city's Hispanic community. It's asking for family interviews. Contact the Historical Society. Share your story. Local artist and barber Joe Rocco has new art opening Sunday at the WB Tatter Studio Gallery. Live music, too. You can support his art at his website, staugustineFamilyBarber.com. A new children's book puts a positive spin on the quarantine. Local author Shireen Batey has authored Queenie Quarantini, the story of animals who have to social distance but can see each other through rainbow sunglasses. A great children's book idea for you all. And some more good news. David Luckin is here. As we mourn the death of Charlie Watts of the Rolling Stones, you've got a tribute.
We will pick up the mantle of all the great music that he played and recorded for us. Rolling Stones all day long on Anthology on HD3 and the WJCT app. I've gone in and put them at the top of every hour and 20 and 40 after the hour. So lots of Stones all day. And 7 p.m. Sunday, Blues Horizon with Andrew Wickman is going to feature Charlie Watts with the Stones and all of his independent work, with all kinds of great music. So 7 o'clock Sunday on HD3 and all day today on HD3 and the WJCT app. Enjoy the Rolling Stones. Rest in peace, Charlie. We love you.
That's right. He's no longer waiting on a friend. He's joined his friends on the other side.
I love that song.
And go to jacksmusic.org for more about all of our musical offerings here at WJCT Public Media. It's our Jacksonville Music Experience. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
And that's our show. Thanks for listening. Thanks to senior producer Heather Schatz, associate producer Catherine Hobbs, director Josh Torres, editorial director Jessica Palumbo, and digital editor Bill Bortsfield. I'm Melissa Ross. We'll be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Be safe, everyone. Have a great day.
I see a red door and I want it painted black. No colors anymore, I want them to turn black. I see the girls walk by dressed in their summer clothes. I have to turn my head until my darkness goes.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.